Welcome to Outside Sales Talk, where we meet with industry experts to learn the strategies and tactics that make them successful. I'm your host, Steve Benson, and I've helped thousands of salespeople all over the world crush their quota. Today, I'll help you crush yours.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Outside Sales Talk podcast. Today we're spinning this podcast around and I'll be interviewing your host, Steve Benson. So my name is Anna and I'm the head of PR here at Badger and I'm also producing the show. So today I was thinking we'll dive deep into Steve's background and his career in sales, how he got started, how he built a sales career, and then how he ultimately ended up starting Badger and growing the company, and his lessons along the way and challenges. So Steve, tell us a little bit about how you got started in outside sales and your lessons along the way. I know you started after college in insurance and then kind of went to IBM and Autonomy and then Google. So tell us a little bit about your experience at the different kinds of companies and industries.
Okay, yeah. So, I guess so. I got started in insurance at Allstate right after college, and I was there for about 3 years. Then I went to business school at Stanford, and it was there that I when I entered business school there, I wasn't planning on going into sales afterwards, but it was during that time that I realized that was a really good fit for me. It was actually on the advice of a really good friend of mine who's a very insightful guy. Now he runs a pretty cool company, Stride Travel. But it was on his advice. He was like, I was looking at like consulting jobs, and which is a very common path out of business school, whereas sales really isn't. And he was like, I think he basically told me in a nutshell, you'd be a pretty average consultant. Lots of people would have very similar skills to you, but you may have special skills in sales, and you might be one of the better guys in the room at that. And so, whereas you'd be just a normal person in consulting, no special skills or abilities, I suppose. So he told me, he basically warned me I would be awful mediocre at that job.
Well, what did he say was that specific skill that would make you so specifically made for sales?
I think it was communication, leadership, grit. I think he just saw a lot of the characteristics that one would often look for in a salesperson, and so he felt that those were the areas where I would excel. And so I agreed with him. I was like, wow, that's insightful. And so I started looking at sales jobs going out of business school, and I landed. I looked at selling a couple different things. I was looking at med devices and technology. And I landed on technology as being the thing that was really interesting to me. So I started out at IBM, which is a really interesting place to start selling. IBM, they obviously started out as like a hardware and software company, but then they moved most of their business into consulting eventually. So I kind of had to learn to sell, consulting services and hardware and software and get exposed to all those different parts of the market. And IBM they do a little of everything. So, they really try to be a place where it's like, well, one throat to choke, you could give us your whole IT stack and we'll take care of the whole thing. And so it was a really good place to get started because it gave me a broad understanding of what the tech space looked like. One of my lessons there was selling hardware, services, and software. Was that software is a lot better of a business than hardware. Hardware is a challenging industry in technology. It often commoditizes. IBM's obviously selling servers against Dell and HP and commodity boxes, and it was a difficult time to be, between the trends of cloud computing and virtualization at the time. It's a tough industry. So I learned that was a tough industry. Services are always tough because you're actually doing a thing and selling hours of professionals, which is, better than the margins on hardware in general, but also fraught with risk and challenge and difficulty and unhappiness in customers, et cetera. And then there was software where it was like, here's the disk, and yes, the software is going to do what it says, what we say it does, and it, lo and behold, it does. And so I really liked the software industry the best. It was, the highest margin. It's like, a good way to think about this is and this is a lesson across the board, I'd say, for salespeople. you want to sell expensive things that are high margin. The more expensive and the more high margin, the more value you're creating for the company that you're selling for. And so probably you're going to get paid more. So if you sell them, what's harder to sell? $1 million in hardware or $1 million in software? I mean, $1 million in hardware or software, for the CIO or whoever buying it, it's $1 million. $1 million is $1 million. A dollar is a dollar, right? But for a company that just sold $1 million in hardware, maybe it cost them $900,000 to make and ship and deal with that $1 million in hardware. The software didn't cost anything. It's just got a cost of sales on it, right? So it's basically pure margin. So, they're giving the company a disc and saying, "Where's our $1 million?" Whereas for servers, it's like, "Well, we just delivered you this truckload of servers, and these ones broke, and it's hard." So, bottom line, that's the lesson for salespeople there. So, sell high margin and the more expensive things you can. And with that advice, taking that advice to heart, I then switched to a company called Autonomy, just selling software. And from there, there was kind of a trend that was starting then, that we were actually, Autonomy was in the same building as Salesforce, one of the early players in the SaaS space. There was a trend of moving software from disks and downloads to software as a service. And Autonomy was experimenting with that, and I got exposed to it there. And then I switched to Google, who was really going after that market and really kind of lead with Salesforce and a few other companies like SuccessFactors, really going after that market. And so that's how I ended up selling software as a service at Google. That's the story.
How many years were you at Google before?
3.5, 4. I'd have to check my LinkedIn profile.
So do you remember, I think the first sale is usually like a big deal for someone who is starting out in sales. And do you remember your first sale and how that was, and if that was challenging or if it was very rewarding, or how that experience was like when you made your first big sale?
Yeah, I mean, so IBM, almost all deals are complex deals because they are intertwining hardware and software and services, and so it's a great example of needing to herd cats on both sides of the fence, meaning that you're herding IBM, like other people that work at the company, you're herding those cats and like, oh, this is the specialist on this product, this is the specialist on this product, and then we're bringing in these people to deal with the services, and so when we would do a pitch of a full solution, you would need a lot of people from the IBM team involved and a lot of people from the customer team involved, to touch a lot of places. And my role was kind of to sit in the middle of that. So I was in charge of managing the relationship between IBM and a couple large companies that they were doing business with. And so in terms of lessons from those first sales, I think I kind of already mentioned it, but the lesson was, wow, this software stuff is great. These services, I mean, we would, you could talk, we would sit and pitch and talk for hours about the services, because you really have to dial it in. It's like, well, we're going to charge you, $500,000 to do this thing. We really have to be sure that we can do that thing profitably within $500,000, but the margins are tight enough that it's like, and a lot of it was like, well, are we really going to be able to do this for $500,000, or are we going to lose money on this? Like the services side is difficult. And
then also probably dealing with all the parties involved, the different influencers in the decision making with the complex deals.
Exactly. And there was some of that at Autonomy too, because we were definitely selling both software and services, but no hardware, and it was cleaner. It was definitely easier and much closer to, Autonomy was much closer to being a software company.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit more about your experience at Google, because I feel like everyone who doesn't work or hasn't worked at Google is always curious about the work environment there and how that experience is like, and especially in sales.
Yeah, well, and I was in a unique part of Google, because like I wasn't selling ads, which is
Mhm.
98% of their business at the time, or 99%, I don't even know. I think it's less now. They've diversified a bit, but I mean, mostly what they do is sell ads on that. On as people enter the internet, they get to lay ads on the way in. Great business if you can get a monopoly on the entrance. Do
That
that.
helps.
it's a good business model. But I wasn't involved in that part at all. I was involved in their enterprise software group. So Gmail, selling Google Apps, Gmail, their search appliance, their security software, um, Google Maps. So the software that they sell to companies, and that was that was basically a startup within Google. When I joined, I'm not sure, there were probably 150 people working on that. It was very early. Now it's huge, obviously, and it's their cloud computing business has gotten very large in general. But it was very early, so I kind of got to experience how Google does a startup within Google, which was that I learned a ton there. And I mean, just a tremendous amount about how this stuff gets organized and what strategies work. They have a huge advantage in that their brand is made of solid gold. So anything you're doing when you're selling their products, you've really got that brand backing you up. So we were able to do some things from a marketing and sales perspective there that, as a startup, now I could, when I started Badger, we could never have done, obviously, but I guess, but learned a ton there. It's a great place to work. I mean, it was a very, very different culture then than my friends that work there now tell me, but because it was much more startup-y and young. It's, obviously a huge company now, one of the biggest in the world. But yeah, they treat employees really well. Obviously there's all the perks that you hear about, the food.
They're all true.
They basically are. I mean, they print money, right? So it turns out money doesn't buy you love, but it does buy a lot of nice things. So in terms of being an employee, they're definitely able to confer a lot of value, through, because they have a lot of money to spend. So there are a lot of perks of being there, and that's one of the things you look for in a job, is it being pleasant and perky. And so it was a great place to learn. It was a great place to grow, and it was also, they do make it very pleasant. Very hard to leave there to go bare bones in a startup.
Yeah, so that's actually the transition was perfect. So how did you come up during your time at Google still? How did you come up with the idea of Badger, and what was the inspiration there?
Well, a lot of people start out, being like, oh, I want to start a company. I want to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
There's like this whole thing in our culture now, and especially in the Valley here, in San Francisco, people, kind of idolize the concept of entrepreneurship and really think, they go after it a lot. And it's a popular concept. I actually didn't start out saying, oh, this is what I want to do. I always want to be, I was, happy in my sales role and kind of developing my career in that direction. I guess I saw the problem that Badger solves, or I guess the set of problems that Badger solves. And I understood it really well because of my background in sales. And I had worked with done a lot with mobility at Google, on the Android side, and done a lot with with mapping at Google. And so I understood that there were field salespeople being extremely mobile, and the development and the direction that mobility was going in, and these phones that we're all walking around. I mean, this is 2009, and so 2010. So that I was people all had these phones in their pocket, but they were slower. The internet was slower on them. The processing power on the actual mobile device was slower. But I could see where it was going, and so I was trying. I think the Google Maps API was maturing, so I was able to see, well, these devices with this API and these mapping capabilities are going to be able to solve this problem for these people as all these kind of technologies mature, and there's going to be a confluence there. And so it was kind of a matter of seeing that happening and then skating to where the puck was going instead of where the puck was. And I basically just saw the opportunity and went for it. It definitely felt a little crazy at the time, and my mom definitely thought it was crazy. Why would you leave Google? It seems so nice that they're making you lunch and everything.
That is hard to leave.
For sure. But you know, ate ramen and peanut butter for a few years and I lived. It was fine.
Yeah. I mean, so, you basically experienced that problem yourself, right? It was still when you were in that role too, and were out in the field, and realizing I'm missing opportunities because I just didn't realize that this client or this lead was in that area too, or
For sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, and salespeople, the problems we're solving, salespeople have always had, there just wasn't technology to solve it yet. I mean, you know, in 1964, people had a map, and it was actually great. I watched that movie, Ray Kroc, the McDonald's founder, and like he was like a field sales guy for like he was selling milkshake makers to restaurants, and he's a field sales guy, and like it's 1965 or whatever, and he's driving around. He's got a map, and he's calling people from like landlines, and he's building a route, and he's got his customer leads and his lists. You know, he's doing all the things that Badger does. He was just doing it by hand.
Yeah.
And that's until Badger came along, that's what people were doing, right? I mean, they had switched, you know, they weren't using paper maps anymore. They were using MapQuest or Google Maps. They had CRMs. They weren't using just a stack of note cards. But they still had their calendar. Maybe it wasn't paper, but it was on
all separate devices or apps.
Separate software, not talking to each other. No capability to like automate a route building, you know, or anything like that. So, and just not able to manipulate the information in a geographic way, right? Being able to sort your customers by different attributes on. These weren't things that were available to me when I was at Google, and I knew
you wished. Yes, you had them.
And there were, and in my whole sales career, I'd always been outside sales, and I was scratching my own itch for sure, and I knew there were tons and tons of other people that had the same problem. It's not, you know, I was just in the right place at the right time. I'm not like a creative genius or anything like that. It was like, well, these phones are gonna get better. I've worked with Google Maps. I know what it can do, and I know this problem because I'm already in sales. So
it was definitely a great position to get started with Badger,
and that's basically what happened. I mean, I was like, well, you know, this is a big problem. You could build a company solving this problem. Who do I know that could do such a thing? I guess I could do that. So I jumped in the deep end, and the rest was history.
Was there like a breaking point that made you take that leap? I don't know, maybe like supporters from your friends or family that said like, yeah, do it, or was it just more yourself pushing it and you're like, I'm just gonna risk it?
I guess about 6 months before I left, I really, you know, had decided to do it. I went on a backpacking trip with my sister. We did every year. We hike around in the mountains. Do it less now that I'm super busy and doing all this, but and she's got less free time these days too. But we always just take a 9-day trip a year and go weekend to weekend and hike around the mountains. And on that trip, I basically talked your ear off about the idea, and I was trying to decide, should I go after this or stay on the comfortable path here, and so that was kind of the breaking point where I was like, there's a big opportunity here, and I could do this. I could solve this. I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it was, in all honesty.
I feel like that's usually always the case. If you start a business, there's so many things that come up that you didn't think of, or
I mean, I would have thought that I was seeing around this corner, right? It's like, I had a business background. I wasn't like your average engineer. It was like, I'm going to start a business. How hard could this be? Like, I actually understood a lot of the complexity of this sort of thing, and studied it in business school and stuff. But even given what I knew, which was not enough, I thought it would be 3 times easier than it actually was. And there's another piece of advice for a lot of people who are thinking about starting a company. It is a lot harder than, if you've got a comfy job at Google, you might want to consider staying. or any nice comfy job. It's like
You have to be made for it, and like you have to.
it's fraught with risk. It's a
Yeah.
lot harder than you think, and you gotta when you start a business, you have to drag and push the rock up the mountain, and most rocks are not able to be pushed up mountains. So it often I've seen it I've seen it go badly more often than I've seen it go well, and we had a lot of lucky breaks and a lot of things happen that worked out for us that weren't predictable. So it's hard to. One of my lessons was that it's harder than it sounds.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books is actually called Impossible to Inevitable. It's a Jason Lemkin's book, and he talks about why it's basically impossible to get a company from 0 to 1. It's like to go from $0 in revenue to $1 million. And then the second part, inevitable, once you're making I think his number is 10 million. At 10 million, a SaaS business is basically unstoppable because there's so many people. You've proven out that there's a market and there's enough money coming in the door that you're going to be able to keep developing that market. So, great title for a book, but it is basically impossible to get from 0 to 1. But when you do it, it's great.
Yeah, when you do it, when you've made that leap, yeah. So what do you think was the biggest challenge that you had to face while starting Badger? And that can be at the very beginning or after the first year.
The biggest challenge is so we had a lot of advantages over a lot of startups. Just having a professional sales and marketing person myself on staff from the beginning. That's a lot of startups are started by like a couple of engineers who the marketing and sales side, I think deep in their hearts, they really believe will just work itself out once. If they build a great product, people will discover it and come, which does work sometimes, but often doesn't. A lot of great companies die not because they weren't able to create great technology or solve a problem. They just weren't able to tell the world, hey, we've solved a problem. It's worth you paying us to solve. The biggest challenge is we were always very good at interacting with early customers and understanding their problems and understanding what problems we needed to solve to make them willing to pay for a solution. And that's what it's all about, right? It's about creating 10 times the value than your thing costs, right? It's like you're going to buy this thing and it's going to create 10 times the value. So, and that's kind of when people see a problem when they see a problem of that scale being solved, it's obvious enough to them. They're like, oh, I should really do this. Even though it's a noisy world and everyone's got a million things going on. If something's like, oh, this is a big problem and it's worth something to me, then it's only that much to solve it. Okay, I actually probably should make that happen. That wasn't the biggest challenge for us, which is the biggest challenge for most people. Paying customers and solving the right problem, interacting with customers enough that you really nail their needs. Our biggest problem was always around doing enough for customers quickly enough. So meaning solving enough problems that
so more on the engineering and product side.
Developing the actual product, because we never had enough hands on deck because it was always, we want to solve all these problems for these customers, and this is what a full solution would look like, is doing all of these things, and we don't have enough engineers to build that. It's going to take years to build that. So it's choosing, okay, well, let's solve this and this, and then next we'll do this and this, and then we'll go back and do this better, and then we'll do this and this, and so that was it was definitely the creating the product to solve the problem that was always the problem, the biggest challenge for Badger.
Yeah. And you bootstrapped the business as well. So what made you decide to do that and go that
Well, that's why it was so hard, because we never had enough money for enough engineers. And engineers are hard to come by, right? I mean, it's a competitive hiring environment in San Francisco and for talented engineers. But we bootstrapped the business, which is sometimes the right decision for a company and sometimes the wrong decision for a company. I think a lot of people default to thinking, I need to raise VC money. I think a lot of companies, VC money actually isn't the best fit for them. If you're not going to grow explosively and become a really pretty big company in like, 6 to 9 years, then VC money is going to cause problems for you, because that's really what their business model needs, not because they're jerks, just because they're making they make big bets on things that sometimes don't work out. And so they have a lot of companies go to zero. If you're investing in Instagram, then and things like Instagram, there's going to be one winner in the photo sharing space, or two maybe. We'll ask Snapchat in a few years how, but there's going to be a handful of winners in the world of photo sharing. But 20 businesses must have got VC money in that space, right? There's only one winner, so, or a couple winners, but so if you're a VC and you're investing in those types of spaces where there's going to be a lot of zeros, you need the ones that do work out to really be heroes if you're going to give a good return to your investors as a VC. So they, back to us, that means we didn't take VC money because as we were looking at this, it did not appear to me that we would have a $80 million to $120 million business in 6 to 9 years. And that's really, in the SaaS space, the types of returns that you need, the types of speed. And go figure, I was right. We're not a $100 million business 7 years into it. So, that means I was right. The VCs would have been angry, and that would have caused conflict, right? Because they need to give their money back to their LPs, limited partners, and they need to do it in a time frame. Their fund only lasts so long. So they really need explosive businesses to invest in, and you can. I think a lot of people try to trick them into thinking that the entrepreneur hopes and the VC hopes that this will be an explosive business of that nature, and sure, there's always a chance, but in my heart of hearts, I did not think that was the industry that we're looking at here. I thought this was more of a longer haul. I mean, I think we're growing into a big company, but we need 15 years to get there, not 7. So it's so that's how we ended up bootstrapping, and it worked out for us because we were able to monetize early on, and that's obviously critical. If you're gonna bootstrap a business, you need to be able to bring in revenue early, because something's got to pay people's salaries, right? And we had some advantages too. I mean, I could basically not pay myself for years because I had some savings from my prior jobs, and I could play a lot of roles. I could do the marketing, sales. I could wear a lot of hats.
It was a big advantage too that you came from the sales background too. We're able to get those early sales.
Yeah. Real helpful to have a free expensive resource like that. Yeah. So we were able to, and we also, the early team, we just had a fantastic early team, and they were all able to wear all the hats and get the things done. And you need that if you're bootstrapping, is you can't have any big gaping holes. So it all kind of fell into place, and we definitely got lucky in that. But because it'd be easier if you raised $10 million, but then 6 years later, if you're not making $60 million a year, you're gonna have a problem. So
this is really interesting. Also, maybe for listeners who are looking to maybe start eventually their own business, is there any advice that you would give to someone who's kind of thinking about maybe starting their own thing?
Oh, don't do it. Just enjoy your life, man. It is the most rewarding thing I've done professionally. Obviously, I've learned so much. It's been fantastic. I'd say I recommend to people that they take the leap and start a company, but start a company the way a naked man climbs a barbed wire fence, very, very carefully. Don't just jump in. Don't just think about it carefully. Research. Make sure that the problem that you're solving is one that people will pay for. And you got to have conversations with a ton of people who you think are going to be your buyer, right? And then there should just be lots of them. If you're going to start a company, you should be able to find thousands of people who are like, oh, and that person would buy it, and that company would buy it, and that company would buy it. And this, and you got to talk to a bunch of them and have them say, yeah, I like it's showing them what you're going to do, paint the dream for them, and then ask them, if I build this for you in 4 months, would you, and it's, and I'm able to solve this set of problems, would you buy this for this much money at that time? And if they're like, oh yeah, you solve that problem for that much money all day, I'll pay you. Whereas if to that question they hem and they haw a little bit and they're like, oh, I mean, I'd have to check it out, I have to see it, I'm not sure, that's real bad. So you want people to be like, oh yeah, I would, if you solve this problem, I would pay that much for sure. Heartbeat. Done.
Making
Show
sure
me where to
that
sign.
do that research before and are sure there is a market.
Yeah,
for it.
because a lot of people seem to think they're solving the right problem, or they are solving a problem, but it's not one that people would pay for. And you can bring those early customers in over the line too. You can say, when you're interacting with those early customers, you can say, you can do it almost like a consulting engagement. Like you can get them to sign, hey, if you sign up now, it's going to be, we always have to build it for the next 4 months. If you don't finish it for 6, we're not going to start charging you, but if you'll sign now, we can do it at this price. And if you were to wait another sorry, my phone's going off here. If you were to wait another year before you do this, it would end up costing, in a year this product will be done, we'll be charging this much. So you're taking a little risk because what if we couldn't do it or something, but you're in exchange, you're going to get this first, you're going to have an advantage over your competitors because you'll have it and they won't, and you're getting it at a discount now. So it's going to cost 10 times more in 2 years. So come in now and sign.
Yeah,
so
that's really great advice.
You can get people to sign up that way, and we did. I mean, and so not only you're then funding the business with that, but you're also validating people are really going to pay for this.
Yeah.
So that's my advice to people that are starting out in creating a business. Make sure you can check those boxes, and that really mitigates your risk.
Yeah, this is great advice, and I think also getting to know your background, and we got your whole story now, kind of everything comes together. Maybe also listeners understand better where the idea of Badger came from, and that you experienced that same problem, and kind of where your inspiration for Badger came from. So we'll go into our next section now, which is called Sales in 60 Seconds. So you'll give us the answers, as you obviously know, in 60 seconds or less. So first of all, tell us a fun fact about Badger's early days.
Oh, we had a lot of fun in Badger's early days. A lot of foosball, a lot of late nights putting things together. Fun fact: Badger for a little while was operating out of the back of a dentist office down by the train station. They had the dentist office had a room in the back where they kept their garbage cans. And Badger, real estate's expensive and hard to come by in San Francisco. And so to go to the bathroom, we'd have to walk by all these dentist chairs, people getting their teeth worked on. Yeah, it was a little weird, but the rent was really cheap, and and we had no money, so that was good that it was really cheap. So we were in the back of a dentist office.
That is funny. I'm sure that was a great experience. What is your favorite podcast that you listen to?
My favorite podcast? Well, I really like the SaaStr podcast. That would not be terribly helpful to our sales listeners, but it's basically they bring on SaaS software company execs and investors and discuss different issues around running one of these businesses and how to do it right, and ideas and how to market. All they cover in general all the things that I'm
That
interested
you
in.
need to know.
Put on by a guy named Harry Stebbings, young guy
Yeah.
from England, great accent.
That's
it's
fun.
they get great people on there because they great guests on the podcast so it's really it's cool. That's
Nice.
that's the one that I listen to. I listen to all their episodes, and they've got
Cool.
200.
Yeah.
So
Wow. We're not quite there yet.
yeah.
What do you enjoy most about your job?
Well, I think that I enjoy building the team, growing the people on the team, and watching them develop, and like working with them to kind of grow and build on themselves. We've got Badger's an interesting culture. Obviously, who's interviewing here. People really like working here, and it's we have a lot of it's a lot of everyone's friends, and like it's a really unique culture, and my favorite part is the people that I work with.
That's awesome.
And these days I used to interact with our customers all the time. Now I'm much more. I spent a lot less time with our customers and interacting with them, and a lot more time interacting with the team and growing the team and building it. So I work on the company rather than working on the product or our customers. It's really I'm pretty company focused at this point.
Where do you see Badger in 5 years?
Well, I mean, things are obviously going really well. Hopefully we'll just keep growing at our current rate, and we'll be a much bigger company solving many more problems for field salespeople in 5 years. I mean, I'm really proud of what we've accomplished so far, and we've solved a lot of annoying big problems for field salespeople, but there are a bunch more that are on our list, and so we're going to keep having our engineering team crank away at all these problems, and keep having keep bringing more people on and getting them set up successfully, and really I plan on just keep adding to the capabilities in the product.
Nice. How did you come up with the name of Badger Maps?
Badger Maps.
Badger?
Well, I went to the University of Wisconsin for undergrad, and so I am a Badger. It also in 2012, when I was naming the company, like January 2012, there's that video. One of the most popular videos of 2011 on YouTube was the crazy nasty ass honey badger.
Yeah.
Which, if you haven't seen that, you really should look it up. It's hysterical.
I'll go onto Google and type in honey badger.
Yeah, the crazy nasty ass honey badger, and it's got this hysterical 4-minute video talking about badgers. So at the time, the badger had a very good brand to it. So it brought a smile to people's faces.
Nice. That's a good combo then. Final question. What is your best sales advice that you'd like to leave our listeners with today? Since you haven't given yours.
In 60 seconds?
You can take some more time.
No,
double the time.
No. The best advice I can give in sales, I think, is to don't seek to sell, seek to create value, and seek to understand your customer, listen to your customers and prospects, and seek to create value for them in any way that you can, really. I mean, just be a valuable resource, whether it's giving them great information when they're a prospect, whether it's about your product or about other things. Just be a resource, create value in the world, and though that karma and favors and it all comes back to you, and salespeople are the grease in the gears of the machine of the economy, and I just made that up. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
They and if they seek to create value and make things go smoother, and just then the economy grows, and they're able to create value and make sales, and it all kind of filters, all cycles back.
Yeah. That was great advice. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story, for sharing your background, for sharing more details about Badger. That was great.
Well, and thank you for producing the show, and thank you for having me on my show.
For sure. Anytime, Steve. So guys, that was it. I hope you enjoyed this special episode of Outside Sales Talk. We learned so many interesting things about Steve and also how Badger got started and why. As always, if you have any feedback, feel free to reach out to us to feedback@outsidesalestalk.com. If you like the podcast, please subscribe to it. It really helps us if you leave a review as well. It helps us spread the word. And so we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back with an amazing guest next week. So stay tuned.